Hi folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, in weeks past, I've passed on a lot of the information my buddy Dave Swanson down on Cayuga Lake has given me about the perch fishing that he's doing, because I know it relates to all the waters that we might fish right now. And Dave told me this morning that one of the things that I've kind of left out was his finishing touches for the year in going out. He started fishing perch every day, and he was learning from this experience. This is something relatively new for him, except for when he was a kid growing up down in that area. But he's learned so much about their behavior. And one of the things that we've talked about is the type of line that you use to be able to do this. Dave has experimented with 3 different type of lines. Berkeley Sensation, it's a 4-pound monofilament line. P-Line, which is another brand that makes a line similar to this. And he's even used Power Pro in 8 and 6-pound tests. And that Power Pro line is a braided line that's as thin as a 1-pound monofilament. And he's told me that his preference really seems to be the 4-pound test Sensation. He really likes that line. He says it's the most comfortable for him to use. And I says, well, what does that mean? He says, well, the fish don't seem to mind the color of it. And he said, it just seems to work the best for me. He uses little size 6 circle hooks. And he's using soft plastic minnows that he molds, that he makes. And we've talked about color before. He says, you wonder if color makes all the difference. He says, I found that day after day they can switch in their preference. But he said the one color that seems to work every day for him is like a silvery colored minnow. He said that seems to work the best. He says he's used the other colors. One day yellow was great. He says he even had a day where they seemed to prefer pink. But on average, they prefer this blackish silver type minnow. That it's hard to describe colors when you're not looking at them. But he said the other thing is he has as much luck using these soft plastics as people do with live bait, fishing with other people in the same boat. He said the fish, they don't seem to care that these aren't real. And he said the other thing that he finds is he uses a like when we talk about fishing the St. Lawrence, about the drop shot type of lures that we use, a drop shot sinker. At the end of his line, he ties that right onto the end of the line, and then a foot to 18 inches above, he ties his first hook, which is a size 6 circle hook. Now, we'll talk about circle hooks in a minute. There's a reason he uses those, because he said the fish don't tend to take those into their stomach. And that makes a big difference, because a lot of the perch he catches, he just throws back. If they're not 9.5 or 10 inches, he measures them and makes sure, because he's not going to keep them any smaller than that. And he says the circle hook works best. And he said, in using some of these other colored lines, that doesn't seem to push the fish away. And he says what he has experienced is normally he's finding these perch in underwater weed beds. You wouldn't see the weeds on top of the water, but they come off the bottom. And he says if they're he thinks that most of them are a foot above or maybe a little more. And he says when he lets the lure down, or his bait presentation down, if it goes right to the bottom, he says the fish don't hit it on its way down. And he said they don't hit it if it's on the bottom. When he feels that sinker like sticking into the weeds or ripping through the weeds, as it rips free of the weeds, is when he usually feels a strike. Now remember, his baits are above that. I found some of this information incredible because it really tells what happens. He said the other thing is he's using downward facing graphs or screens where he can see right what's underneath him, and he's fishing vertically from letting the line go right under the boat. And he says the biggest fish he catches are when he first goes to an area. And I said, Dave, I think that's the reason that is that usually, and I've said this before of any of us fishing the Grass River, when you cast out into a pool, your greatest chance of catching the biggest fish in that pool is on that first cast, because the big fish will dominate. Doesn't matter what species they are. It's the same with the perch. They're mixed in with these schools of smaller fish, and usually the big fish are going to dominate and get to the bait first, or they're going to bully the other fish. It's the same way with all forms of life, I guess. And, this is something I found really interesting, too. But, this time of the year, we still can have great perch fishing. And I said to Dave, you seem to enjoy that more than going for lake trout. He said, well, I love going out for lake trout. But he said, there's something about this perch fishing that is really special. I don't have to travel as far to find the schools of fish. And he said, in the fall like this, the lake trout migrate to their spawning grounds, which is much farther in the lake. And this is interesting to know, too, because most of the fish and animals do this. So the perch fishing right now has been fantastic, and it should be fantastic for anybody having a chance to get out on any of our waters right now. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.